Not good, Chinese people. Ugh.
Recently, a Chinese man was taking a taxi and said, "Yesterday at the airport, I met a Russian woman, and it felt like I was being discriminated against in Russia." A lot of Chinese people don't realize how dangerous it is to go to Russia. They don't really welcome Chinese people. On December 1st, 2025, Russian President Vladimir Putin signed an executive order announcing that Chinese citizens can now enter Russia visa-free with a regular Chinese passport, staying for up to 30 days until September 14, 2026. Just as Russia opened up its visa policy, a young man from Chongqing went to Russia for tourism, only to get extorted by local police. On December 3rd, Chinese influencer Long Xiangyu posted a video on social media exposing that on the first day of the visa-free policy, he was extorted for 30,000 rubles by Russian police in Moscow, even though he had a valid visa. They demanded cash. After he refused to pay, they threw him into a prison truck with barbed wire and took him to the police station. Long Xiangyu had applied for the 30-day visa-free electronic visa on November 21st and arrived in Russia. He stayed at his uncle's house in Moscow near the Lublino market, which had a notorious reputation. Many Chinese tourists have reported being extorted by corrupt police in this area. In the video, Long Xiaoyu described that on the evening of December 1st, after he and his uncle left the store, a local police officer quickly approached and asked to see their documents. Since he didn't have his residence permit, the officer tried to extort him, initially asking for a fine of 5,000 rubles, which later increased to 30,000 rubles. They forcibly dragged him into a prison truck with barbed wire, threatening him with physical force and verbal intimidation, and took his phone. Inside the truck, there were other detainees. One Chinese man said he had been detained many times before, each time being asked to pay 50,000 rubles to be released. These officers were making money by extorting Chinese people. At the police station, the officers started interrogating him in turn. His uncle tried to take out his phone to record, but the corrupt officer snatched it away and deleted the previous videos. The officer even pulled out a gun and pointed it at his uncle's shoulder, scaring Long Xiaoyu and his group into not making any further moves. An officer with a submachine gun told Long Xiaoyu that without a residence permit, the fine was 15,000 rubles. After some bargaining, the officer agreed to reduce the extortion to 8,000 rubles and demanded that Long Xiaoyu transfer the money directly to his personal account, which was clearly illegal. Under the video, a user commented, "The worse the economy, the worse the public security. The more serious the government's rent-seeking behavior, I don't understand why anyone would still want to travel to Russia." Another user sarcastically remarked, "Now, Russia's economy is on the verge of collapse. Both the underworld and law enforcement are sharpening their knives, waiting to go after Chinese people. The worst is yet to come." On November 4th, 2025, a Chinese netizen posted a video revealing a Russian police raid, where dozens of migrant workers were forcibly drafted. Russian law enforcement conducted a raid in Volgograd Oblast, capturing illegal immigrants and sending them to the recruitment office. The raid, carried out by local police, Federal Security Service, and the National Guard, was a large-scale operation targeting migrant workers in greenhouses and farms. These areas have long been known as hubs for foreign laborers. According to reports from 102 Communications Agency, the raid started early in the morning, with no warning, and officers barged into greenhouse, plastic tents, and farm dormitories. They even used drones for aerial surveillance to capture illegal detainees trying to escape into bushes or hide in gaps between greenhouses. This operation left almost no chance for anyone to flee. On-site footage shows that most of the arrested immigrants had arrived in Volgograd during the spring, just before the greenhouse planting season. Many of them were working in agriculture and had little contact with the outside world. After being discovered by law enforcement, some remained silent, nodding to indicate understanding, while others pretended to be mute. However, after about half an hour of questioning and communication, even the quietest ones had no choice but to cooperate. A user from Inner Mongolia commented under the video, "Many of the people working in Russia's greenhouse produce farms are Chinese." China and Russia have visa-free entry now, but be careful when traveling to Russia. Why? because several European countries have accused Russia of using false pretexts for conscription, employing many foreign nationals. According to Ukrainian records, more and more people from Africa and Asia were tricked into going, even though they didn't want to fight. They were deceived and ended up on the Ukrainian battlefield. Ukraine captured a Kenyan athlete named Evan. He was invited to St. Petersburg for a cultural performance and ended up signing something he didn't understand because he didn't know Russian. He was then transported to the front lines, trained in shooting, and thrown into battle, where he was eventually captured. An emergency email shown in the video reads, "Recruitment Committee, oh my god, I'm Chinese. They can't draft me, can they?" A Chinese man who had married and settled in Russia was also called up for military service. The letter had his name and tax number on it, which scared him half to death. He checked and found out that since he hadn't become a Russian citizen yet, he didn't need to worry too much. A Chinese student also warned other Chinese tourists in Russia to be cautious of Russian police fines. A netizen commented that when entering Russia, you should always carry 5,000 rubles just in case, because if you encounter corrupt Russian police, no matter how complete your documents are, you may still have 5,000 rubles taken from you. She also mentioned that in the past, international students and tourists have been scammed, and now, with the increase in Chinese tourists due to the visa-free policy, Russian black police might specifically target Chinese people, so everyone should be careful. One vlogger who recently visited Russia complained about being fined without reason.
I just want to talk about my experience. As someone who's been to Russia, I want to say that it's not as great as the online marketing makes it seem. The situation there is completely different from what we see online, and I can speak from personal experience. For example, as soon as I got off the plane, I regretted it. I was held up at customs for 3 hours. The efficiency was so low, and the attitude was so bad. It left a deep impression on me. Then the travel experience was really bad. One day, we were going to a small town to visit a big cathedral. It took us more than 2 hours by car, and as soon as we left the train station, I was caught by the police and taken to the police station. I had a visa, I did everything I was supposed to do, and I didn't do anything illegal, but they still wanted to take me. They said I hadn't reported something and tried to intimidate me. I ended up giving money to the corrupt police, then sat in a car for another 2 hours to go back to the hotel in Moscow, ruining my entire day of sightseeing. We were in such bad mood that day. I hated the place and never wanted to come back.
Another vlogger mentioned that Russian police are very efficient at arresting Chinese people, and it's hard to imagine how much foreign exchange Russia will earn when large numbers of Chinese people visit. He also said, the more Chinese government encourages you to do something, the more you should avoid it. And the less they encourage you to do something, the more likely it is that it is in your best interest. For example, when state-run media encourages you to travel to Russia, if you go, you'll just become fish on the chopping block for Russian corrupt police, contributing to their military funds. A Chinese student who studied in Russia for 4 years posted a video saying, "My experience in Russia has taught me one truth. Russians really don't like us Chinese. Now that China and Russia have a good relationship, we've given them many benefits, but what benefits have they given us? None. The locals look at us with disdain. Now, if you speak Chinese with friends on the street, you'll be scolded, and it could even be considered illegal. It's rumored that Russia is preparing to pass a law saying that speaking any language other than Russian in public will be illegal. When I first went to Russia, I had to communicate with my landlord using hand gestures and a translator. The look in his eyes was unforgettable. He refused to talk to me, and in the end, I couldn't rent the place. But now, looking back, the way we treat foreigners is different. As long as foreigners show a friendly attitude, even if there's a language barrier, Chinese people can still talk to them. Russia always thought of themselves as noble Europeans. The first 2 generations of leaders were pro-European, and they applied to join NATO 4 times but failed. In the beginning, they didn't want to use Chinese products. They've always been pro-European, wanting to buy European imports to please them. Now, we export so many products to Russia. Why? Because they're being sanctioned by the US and Europe, and they have no choice but to buy our products because they can't make their own. even now, they still don't give us any benefits, and customs duties are still increasing. Visa-free entry to Russia may seem like a good thing, a benefit, but if you think about the cost of going to Russia now, let me tell you what the cost really is. First, when you step into Russia, it seems like you've saved the visa fee of 1,000 yuan, but if your passport is a blank one, and the first country you go to is Russia, it could affect your future visa applications for the US, Schengen countries, the UK, and other countries. Right now, European and American countries are very sensitive to travel records from Russia. If your passport only has a Russian entry stamp, the US and the EU won't necessarily refuse you 99% of the time, but the difficulty of your application could increase. Second, traveling to Russia now comes with safety risks. The UK, the US, and the EU have already issued travel warnings advising their citizens not to travel to Russia. So, I'll just say one thing today. Yes, Russia is visa-free. You can go, but are you prepared to bear the hidden costs? One netizen shared, after going to Russia, I was actually denied a US visa. Austria rejected me. Iceland turned me down. I couldn't go to Australia or New Zealand, and all developed countries refused me. This passport is already useless. Another netizen shared their experience. Shopping in Russia, the merchants deliberately jacked up the prices. The taxi driver took a longer route, and even passerby insulted me. These issues need to be resolved, because even with visa-free entry, no one wants to go and put up with this kind of treatment. We just arrived at Moscow airport, taking an Aeroflot flight. Now, we're on the shuttle bus to the terminal. There are still quite a few people on the bus. It's November, and the temperature here is only 3 degrees Celsius. When we got to customs, there were still a lot of people. The taxi cost us 7,000 rubles, 91 US dollars. It was our first time in Russia, and we got scammed. We were in Moscow, just got scammed by a taxi driver. From Red Square to our hotel, it's about 3 kilometers. We saw the ride-sharing price online was in the range of 400 rubles, but it was hard to get a ride, so we took a regular taxi. The driver told us the meter would be fine, but when we arrived, he charged us 5,000 rubles. We had no choice but to pay. In response to Japanese Prime Minister Sanya Takachi's remarks on the Taiwan situation, where she said a Taiwan contingency is a Japan contingency, the Chinese government urged the public to avoid traveling to and studying in Japan. At the same time, the Cambodian government announced on December 2nd that they would implement a visa-free policy for Chinese citizens for a 4-month trial period. During this trial, Chinese citizens only need to fill out an electronic entry form to enter Cambodia. The Ministry of Tourism of Cambodia announced that from June 15 to October 15, 2026, they would trial a 14-day visa-free entry policy for Chinese citizens. The ministry also called on the country's tourism associations and media organizations to pay close attention and actively cooperate in promoting and recommending this visa-free policy. What kind of place is Cambodia? Rumors say it's a hotspot for telecom fraud and illegal activities. Recently, notorious fraud leader Chen Zhi, whose gang the Prince Group operated in Cambodia, was in the spotlight. This criminal group made quick money through high-interest loans and extortion. Killing and illegal prostitution are rampant, and particularly, online crime gangs have grown explosively, with most victims being Chinese people. According to Cambodian official statistics, Cambodia welcomed about 4.8 million international tourists in the first 10 months of this year, with nearly 1 million of them being Chinese tourists. One netizen commented that deep pits in Cambodia are still being dug, and the stories of victims continue to be updated in the news. I just hope more Chinese people wake up. Anyone could be the next target. He said, Cambodia's corruption problem has really rotted to the core. It has long ranked at the bottom in Transparency International's ranking, a country that can't even ensure its own safety, yet the Chinese government encourages its citizens to travel to Cambodia. Some people think the government doesn't take the lives of ordinary citizens seriously. C-Trip Group just announced that they signed a tourism cooperation agreement with Cambodia, and countless C-Trip users quickly canceled their accounts in fear. On overseas social media platform X, a netizen questioned, are Russia and Cambodia really tourist destinations? One country is in the middle of war. The other is poor and underdeveloped. What can you see there? Isn't international travel supposed to be about going to civilized, developed countries to experience different cultures? Going to Cambodia and Russia is like asking for trouble. Another netizen added, next, will Pakistan, North Korea, Iran, and other countries also offer visa-free entry, and then the Chinese government shamelessly promotes tourism there? You need to think carefully. Can a country surrounded by tigers and wolves ensure your safety?